Welcome to the Movie Guide Podcast. I'm Greg.
And I'm Jordan.
And today we're going to review Spectre.
Which we saw last night.
Yep. First half, we're going to do non-spoiler stuff, and then we'll give you a little warning at the end when we're going to shift into spoiler land.
Exactly. I guess I'll start with what I thought.
Yeah, go for it. You have more to say than I did.
Well, I liked it a lot more than you did, I think. Or I wouldn't say a lot more.
Not a lot more.
I liked it more.
On the scale, it was more probably.
I liked the movie. There's definitely a lot that I caught in the movie that others would not, because I'm a fan of the older movies.
You have definitely seen more of the older Bond. I got interested in Bond in the middle of Pierce Brosnan days.
Yeah, I think that because of that, some of the scenes in there and some of the reveals had a little bit more impact on me. That I'll get to that more in the spoiler part, but I think because they had a little bit more of an impact, I liked the film a little bit more. I liked the direction it took and the twists and turns. It's a little slower than the recent Daniel Craig entries, probably all of them. I mean, Casino Royale is a little slow, but I think this one's even a little bit more slower than that.
We can get Casino Royale is my favorite.
It's my favorite
Bond
as well,
ever, and so I'll have more to say about that. It stands alone almost to me among these most recent films.
This one reminds me a lot of the way the older films were done, in that it's more of a spy thriller. You know, he's doing all these investigations and stuff, and it's a slow burn.
There is a lot more investigation. That's true.
And there's action scenes thrown in there, but it's more of this about this investigation until the climax at the end, which I personally liked. It was a nice break from, Skyfall was really fast paced the whole time, which is good. I like Skyfall a lot, but this one was definitely slower.
So yeah, if we're gonna keep, I like this compare. Casino Royale being the first one that Daniel Craig did, and then of course Spectre being the most recent. So the difference here is we don't meet the villain in this movie until fairly deep into the film. Whereas with Casino Royale, we meet him right off the bat.
In Skyfall, you don't meet him until over an hour into the movie, or halfway in the movie. You don't meet.
That's true.
Silver. He has that long monologue where he first comes in, which is a really good scene. But yeah, we don't meet him until later in the movie either. The villain has less to do in this movie, which is something, again, I'll get into with the spoilers. But right from the beginning, though, I like this film a lot because they moved the gun barrel sequence to the beginning.
That single-handedly gave this movie bonus points.
Which was a staple. If you're not as familiar with the older Bond movies, they always have the James Bond walking up and basically shooting at the audience while the theme song plays. They always play that at the beginning of the movies. And for the Craig version, I'm not even sure it was in it for Casino Royale at all. I know Skyfall was at the end.
It wasn't Casino Royale. They do it when he has that fight scene in the bathroom that's black and white.
Okay, yes.
And then the guy sits up and Bond flips out and boom.
Right.
And you're looking down the
That's right. But Skyfall was at the end of the movie, the very end, I believe. And I don't remember Quantum of Solace.
Yeah, I think that you get the feeling they're just kind of playing around with it, like where does it fit best?
But I liked it at the beginning because it's reminiscent of the old
classic.
Movies. And then
right after the games, the GoldenEye video game that came out.
You're more of an expert on that than I am.
Well, that one
I don't video game very well.
If you played games at all, I would recommend this one because and you are a fan of James Bond. It mixes so well with the older movies. But anyway.
But right after that is another one of my favorite parts of the movie. Is for about the first 2.5, 3 minutes, I'd say.
It was a
little longer, you think?
Well, I don't know. No, it wasn't. I don't know if it went on quite 3 minutes, but it was a damn long scene.
It's long. Is one shot. The whole
single
opening
shot, and it's not just like it's like the camera guy is like walking in a straight line. They moved all over the place,
all through thousands of extras too. Man.
Yeah, there's a rig, probably or two involved. My first thought when they the shot's panning over. This is not spoiler, so I won't say anything about where they are. But this panning over the scene outside, over a crowd of people, and it's you're up, so it feels like okay, it's a crane shot, and then it moves down onto the ground, and it doesn't falter. There's no stutter like some guy stepped off of a platform. to keep walking, and then they go inside and up an elevator, and I'm just like, holy crap. And then it moves back into a crane shot. So like I don't know if they did it digitally and had several, but it was beautiful.
I have no idea,
scene.
but I know that I looked over you about a minute into it and was like, this is still one shot. And then even our other roommate who we saw it with, who isn't really into movies as in depth as we are, he looked over at me and was like, is this still one shot? I was like, yeah. I mean, it was incredible. It was pretty good. Overall, it's a very good opening sequence. I mean, that's another thing that have been staples of Bond movies is that first opening sequence before the credits. I like this one. Probably not as much as some of the other ones, especially something like Casino Royale where it has the parkour scene or whatever. That was pretty awesome. But
Casino Royale's scenes, oh my god.
But this one was pretty good. Did not like the opening credits song.
It felt like a R&B kind of.
Yeah, maybe it's just not my kind of music, but I didn't enjoy it as.
Yeah, I imagine listening to that on an elevator. Quite honestly,
I'm usually not. I don't know. The Skyfall song was so good that I didn't think this was going to top it, but I'm usually not waiting for those to end, and this time I was like, all right, let's move on.
Let's move on. I have more to say about that opening sequence, so I'll save for the spoiler section.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about the actual movie itself?
I'm trying to think of what is not.
Well, I mean, Daniel Craig is great again as Bond.
He was.
He's definitely become my favorite Bond so far.
I don't think this is too spoilery. Because the trailer, if I recall, dwelt on this a little more. But there are most James Bond movies. You just see a ton of James Bond. He's on the screen for like 70% of the film. This movie, you introduce all these other characters that we already know. They're not new. It's Q and Moneypenny and Mallory. And
Q has a lot more to do in this movie, which I liked. He's a
usually
good character.
Q makes an appearance, and it's he has some quippy things to say.
I liked their back and forth. Yeah, I like their back and forth in this one, and he's in it for a little bit longer, and I like that aspect.
I like that they've. How do you like his character? They've played him up as a bit more of like a Silicon Valley
younger
nerd. Yeah, he's not a fighter, and that there's.
Well, I mean,
that comes up later in the movie. Again, I'll say for spoilers. Where he has to, he's confronted with a scenario in which he's not prepared for.
Right. But I like that he had a lot more to do with the movie, and the actor's good too. I don't know who that is. I've never seen him in anything else, but I mean, he's done a good job in both this and Sky. He was introduced in Skyfall, and now in this one. I mean, it's a lot different than the older films where it was always an old guy who played Q. I think it was the same guy for the longest time.
Was Q in Casino Royale?
No, he's not in Casino. So. He's first introduced in Skyfall, so he's not in Quantum or Casino.
I wonder if they he's a tough character because everybody loves M and everybody loved Q, the actors, and then when they were gone, I wonder if, obviously M isn't gone, the actress, I forget her name.
Judi Dench,
that's right. She did. Boy, this sounds. I was gonna say she didn't kick the bucket. That's not a nice thing to put that. But anyway,
she's still alive.
Yeah,
but she's not.
My point I was getting at
the
was
Bond
that
series.
These are beloved characters, and I wonder if it took them more time than usual to cast.
It's possible. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's some good action scenes in it. The story is story's interesting to me. I know reading some early reviews and stuff, this has been mixed reviews so far. I think it stood at like a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think it deserves mixed reviews.
And
that's not, again, since we're in non-spoilers, I don't think you should not see the movie.
Right.
I think you definitely should. But don't be surprised if you come out of it going,
Right. I mean, I found the story really interesting. The whole spy thriller aspect of it, I found interesting. But I know that a lot of people didn't like it as much as I did, for lack of better words. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd highly recommend seeing, especially if you're a fan of the older Bond movies, because there's lots of great callbacks to them. I'm gonna rate it a 4.25 out of 5. I liked it a lot. Not quite as good as Casino Royale and Skyfall, but definitely a great movie. Definitely worth checking out in theaters just for the experience of it.
I'd give it a high 3.
High 3?
Yeah, for four land is I'm gonna pay any amount of money to see this. Usually,
Right.
when I think about a four, and if I had not seen this in theaters, it would have been okay.
All right. Well,
However,
it could change. Here's my thing, and I'll get to this in the spoilers here in a minute. My rating could change for better or worse in the future. I'll just leave it at that for now,
Okay.
and I'll get to it in a minute.
yeah, I know why you're gonna say that. The what is something I would not want to see outside of the movie theater is that opening scene. Like I can't say enough about
It's
it.
awesome.
It was beautiful. The music. Wow, we go on.
Well,
But-
here we'll transition into
Yeah, let's
spoilers
pivot
here
now.
so that you can talk about this. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go ahead and cut this off. You've got our brief review and our rating. If you have seen the movie, stick around and we'll tell you about some spoiler stuff that we liked and didn't like. So go ahead. You can get back to the opening scene here.
Okay, yeah. So what I want to the Mexican Day of the Dead
Mm-hmm.
scene, or I don't know anything about it. So like maybe I've said some racial stereotype. I don't know, but that scene was just God. The music just thrilled me. Like it's almost all drums, and they set this tone. Because sort of like some people do, like you'll listen to the music, like if there's Interstellar did this really well on the scene where they go down to a planet that's heavily warped by gravity and therefore time is going to be different, and so they have this music there is very reminiscent of a ticking clock because time is so incredible. And this the drums just it wasn't quite a heartbeat or anything like that, but the drums set this fantastic tone.
See,
Nobody spoke.
Like I told you before, and I've mentioned it in our podcast a couple of times, I don't normally notice things that a lot of, quote unquote movie critics would notice, things like the shots and stuff like that, how they're
The
positioned,
technical stuff.
unless they're really good. So this whole opening shot where it's one shot, I noticed that, really liked it. Music is another one of those things that I don't notice unless it's either really good or really bad, and I did notice the drums in this one.
Oh man, I was just it's 5 seconds into that, I was like, "This is awesome! Yeah, I can't wait for this." So that's my little piece there, and I don't know what else we could really say about that except it's just really fun to watch. The other thing I wanted to mention at the beginning of the movie is that title sequence. They kept flashing people's faces, and they did this throughout the movie. They flash back to M, and they flash back to Silver, and they flash back to Lashif, and I was just like, I felt that was too on the nose. It was like, okay, this story's going to be about these guys.
Well,
hey, remember, the story's going to be about these guys.
But see, I liked how, in the end, you find out that all of this has been because of Spectre, which is this organization that is the main organization in all the old Connery movies.
Oh, it is?
Yes. Spectre.
Okay.
Spectre is the overarching bad guy in all the movies.
That changes it for me, because my thought up to then was like, is this just a big old retcon? Like they've said, okay, well, we need something bigger for this movie, so we're going to tie them all together with this shadow organization that is running the world, kind of a Bilderberg group or something like that.
It's the old organization in all the old movies that covers everything, and it even makes me like Quantum of Solace a little bit more now that Quantum was actually part of this organization. I thought that was really cool.
Who was the bad guy in that movie? Didn't show up here, did he? In the flashbacks.
It was Mr. White. It was the guy that he met with, the father of the daughter. That was the older.
So his sort of organization was part of this large organization. That's interesting.
Which I didn't notice in the previews that was Mr. White until he said something in the actual movie.
Yeah, he's haggard.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and that brought me even further in the movie than when you find out that it's all under Spectre. And then when you get to reveal that Christoph Waltz's villain is actually Blofeld, which is the villain in all of the old Bond movies.
I didn't know that.
And
totally.
So he goes into this little speech because he's got this different name throughout the rest of the movie, and he was like, "That guy is dead." And I as soon as he said that, I was like, "It's Blofeld. It's Blofeld." And then he reveals that he's Ernst Stavro Blofeld, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome."
I'm bummed now that I didn't know that, because that would have felt so much better. Like you clearly did. It would have been.
Oh, it was awesome, and I mean Christoph Waltz you can't get a better guy to play.
I love
a villain
Christoph
like that. So what I'll say is, and I mentioned it in our non-spoiler part, is I need another movie, because if we don't get another movie in this series that continues this Spectre / Blofeld villainous, Christoph Waltz in this movie and the whole Spectre idea and the whole him being Blofeld is wasted on one movie because Christoph Waltz isn't in this movie very much. He's got 15 minutes tops of screen time the whole time. And so I would think that would be a waste unless they've got plans for what happens.
Okay, well, here's what upsets me about that line of thinking. They did, in my opinion, they had such a clear exit for James Bond. It was almost the denouement of the entire James Bond series. They have this conversation that James Bond has with Mallory about, having a license to kill isn't just about killing people, it's also about making the decision not to kill. And in the moment, it's just you and the other guy, and da-da-da-da-da. And then at the end of the movie, he's standing there over Christoph Waltz with basically, literally a license to kill. Mallory stops the cops. He can shoot the guy and then disappear into the crowd, and it's not a big deal. And he decides not to. And not even just put the gun down. He removes the clip and the bullet. Like, it just, to me, was such a clear, I'm done. And you have tones of this, or not tones, hints of this throughout the rest of the movie about how all the girls he's met over the time have been in and out of his life, and he's lost this or lost that, and they're just nameless faces. He puts the gun away, and then he walks off, and what does he do? He goes
with the girl.
He exits the movie with a girl. Like, that never happens. And so to me it was, ta-da, I'm done.
So a couple of things with that. I talked to you a little bit after when you told me this, as soon as the movie was over. I think that they left it open either way. And Daniel Craig is contracted for at least one more movie.
But if you didn't know that, if I
didn't know that,
would you look at this movie and say, I guess that's it?
I would, and I would have been really disappointed in the movie. It would have killed it for me.
That's how I felt.
Knowing that he's contracted for one more, and obviously things can change and stuff like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but...
So he's contracted for one more, so I can see... And this has happened in previous Bond films where it seems like it's the end kind of thing, and then they'll bring him back for one more. It's happened in movies in general, not just Bond films. So while it left it a good closing, it also leaves it open where, yeah, he's gone off with this girl kind of, quote-unquote, retired. But now the way that I would set it up is, if I was writing the next movie, obviously I'm not.
As if we needed to state that.
Yeah. You just have Blofeld escape from whatever custody he's in. And
that would make for an excellent scene.
They had to...
For sure.
They have to bring Bond back. You beat him once, you got to go find him. That's how I want the next movie set up. If they have another movie and it's set up in a similar way to that, this movie is a lot better. If they end it here, if Craig doesn't come back, or they don't follow that route, this movie is a lot worse to me.
Yeah, I think I.
So that's when I said that in my in the non-spoiler part earlier, how it could either go down or up from here. It could go way down, because I think
it's contingent on do they follow through.
They wasted a lot of the elements if they don't go through with it. But overall, good movie. Whether that happens or not, it's still overall a good movie, but it's going to be a lot lower because some of the elements don't work as well if you don't bring them back for another movie. Another thing I did like was, and you called it, two things that you called early in the movie. One was that they were, Bond and Christoph Waltz's villain were related in some way. You said brothers.
I said brothers, and it turned out that they were sort of more in a foster care scenario.
Not stepbrother, foster brothers is what I was looking for. Also, you said that the C character who was taking over MI6 was going to end up being part of the organization.
Yeah, I think if I'd been paying a little more attention, I would have bought that right at the beginning.
Well, see, here's where, and it was right around...
I'm trying to remember what clued me in.
Well, what clued me in, I didn't want to talk to you about this in the movie because it would have been too much talking going on, but...
Yeah, I talk all the time.
when they turn on the TV at one point and the news is on and it says Cape Town in chaos, this is right after South Africa was the only country to not allow his new program.
Yeah.
And so I saw that and was like, I don't believe in coincidences. So, so that kind of clued me into, okay, maybe this is getting interesting.
Well, and I guess if you pop back to the very beginning of the movie, all the crazy things that they mention in the lead up to that meeting all happened in the countries for in the countries where these big intelligence programs existed that they wanted to incorporate into one thing. You know, the United States, Germany, and all these others that have these big organizations. He's a creepy actor. I love him. He was.
I've never seen him before.
He's been in the British series Sherlock.
No,
he played
Moriarty.
Did a very good job at that.
I think that he was a good. He's the villain you see most of the time, and Christoph Waltz is kind of the guy who's got his hands in everything.
He's a puppet.
But he did a good job of being that main guy that we see the whole time until we get the Waltz reveal at the end. But I guess just in closing, I like the movie a lot. Definitely very reminiscent of the older movies, which made me happy because I'm a fan of those. But yeah, any closing thoughts for you? This one's run a little long, I think, compared to our other ones, but there's a lot to talk about in this movie.
Usually we do them right after the movie, but yesterday we chose not to. So we've had time to reflect. I have one other. I'll tease for our full James Bond podcast. I have some questions I want to ask you about the trope of the shadowy organization that runs everything. I think we should talk about that. But at any rate, this has been the Jordan's Movie Guide podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Jordan.